So we're done with repeat sentence for now. If that wasn't bad enough for you, what if I tell you that speaking only goes downhill from here until we get to answer show question? Describe image is next. I hate this question type so much. Not because I don't enjoy doing them myself. I actually do, since I'm a nerd and like to look at charts and numbers, but I despise the way it is being taught in many agencies. Ready for some hate? Here we go. First things first, you will end up with 6 to 7 images per test, and you have to describe them after staring at them. Well, duh. You will have 25 seconds to glance through each picture, and then you will have 40 seconds to talk about what info is conveyed. If you find 40 seconds suspiciously familiar, you're not alone. In fact, I have a full teaching philosophy derived from this one single detail. Describe image is the only speaking question that doesn't contribute to another score. If you ask me, it would make a lot more sense for describe image to affect the reading score than read aloud, but by now you should have known how wonky the whole system is. Not affecting another score doesn't mean it's not important. In fact, this question type is probably on par with repeat sentence in terms of priority for practice, simply because there are so many different types of images you can run into during the test. You should know this by now. Describe image will score fluency and pronunciation just like how it is for read aloud and repeat sentence. The content goes from 0 to 5 as well, with a 5 meeting the following criteria. Describes all elements of the image and their relationships, possible development and conclusion, or implications. So you have to cover quite an extensive range in just 40 seconds to achieve a full content of 5. And this is where the template comes in. I won't go into too much detail about this because I think it deserves its own video, so there will be a separate episode dedicated to templates for all applicable question types. What you need to know for now is that they work by foregoing content heavily and fill the 40 seconds of answering time with meaningless text in hopes to raise the average for fluency and pronunciation. From a purely pragmatic point of view, it is good enough for getting a good score. However, I don't like it because it severely dumbs down the question and over-sacrifices the content, while in many cases getting a higher content isn't that difficult at all. So we'll focus more on how to easily get a decent content and how you can choose to opt out on templates while still getting very good fluency and pronunciation. This is more like how you will be taught when taking a course from a foreign agency or using an approved publication for test revision, so we will compare and contrast the two methods. It might sound like I don't approve of the templates. I may be slightly biased because I personally don't use templates, and I'm a man of pride. However, purely talking test taking here, both methods have shown to work very well, and it should be up to you to decide which method to use. In addition, I have tailored the methods for many students to find the right mix that will work for each individual. Short answer is, knowing the template won't hurt, but you certainly can improve a lot based upon them. Let's go back to the scoring. There are some keywords you should pay attention to. All elements doesn't mean everything on the picture. There are pictures that contain so much information that it's just not realistic to cover every number or detail in mere 40 seconds. If you run into a picture that contains too much stuff, remember that you usually can choose to just say the important bits. What's more nuanced and usually the parts that get left out are the relationships, development, conclusions, and implications. This requires some actual understanding of the information, and for all intents and purposes, templates usually don't cover this, since they are designed to suit a generic type of image, not according to any specific detail. Agencies' fix for this problem is just to include in conclusion somewhere in the text, but oftentimes evading the actual conclusion insinuated by the picture. Come on, you can definitely do better. I'm not asking you guys to freestyle the whole thing, that would probably be a disaster. I'm saying have some flexibility and improvise just a little bit, and then you will see fantastic results. Then comes the time challenge. Read aloud should be perceived as easier than describe image, but for the former, you actually have 10 to 15 more seconds to go over the question. The time limitation is probably the biggest worry for many students, just like how it is with repeat sentence. That's why many students choose to blindly follow the templates, and I understand. Like I said before, it is an acceptable method for taking the test, but I want you to make more informed decisions, knowing what the trade-off is and what you might be missing out on. Let's talk about my philosophy. What we know about the scoring components are as follows. Content must not be zero, and scoring high consistently can be hard because there are too many different types of images, but usually you can have some degree of choice on what to say. Pronunciation basically only considers if what you say are said well, and for a freestyling question, you really can choose how difficult the stuff you say is. Fluency doesn't have much to do with speed, so unless you feel the urgency to say a lot of crap, like when using a template, you don't need to rush at all because you have some freedom to choose what to say. Let's circle back to what we mentioned earlier. Describe image is given the exact same answering time as read aloud. Let's add another premise to this list. As long as you can find a way to get good enough results with the 3 scoring components, I don't really care how you manage to do that. If it works, then go for it. Still waiting for the eureka moment? Here it is. Suppose you are practicing for a specific image type, like line charts. What I strongly encourage you to do is write down the script and then read aloud. Remember that you should read stuff for read aloud instead of talking to score high for fluency and pronunciation. And the same method works seamlessly with repeat sentence. And guess what? So is true for describe image as well. I don't really care how you come up with the original script using templates or otherwise, but I want you to adhere to the following rules. Firstly, anything apart from the core information can be changed, and usually by that, I mean simplified. You get to choose what and how to say to a certain degree, so don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. If you write stuff down, you will start to see where the inefficiencies are and you can start fixing them, so you will less likely stutter or trip over yourself when actually talking. This is just one beauty of this magnificent method. Here comes another one. You have perfect control over how long the script should be, and as a result, how much info you should include. Do you still remember what other question type allows for 40 seconds of answering time and are basically treated the same for delivery? That's right, it's read aloud. If your final script is comparable in length with the typical read aloud question, possibly slightly longer, you are most likely fine with your scripting and choice of info. If it is too short, then you probably missed something important from the picture. If it is too long, then you either have made the sentences too complicated, or you can leave out some of the details. Oftentimes, students ask this very difficult question. Should I include this? Should I include that? Should I give up on the test and cry myself to sleep? My answer is usually this. It depends on how long it would take you to finish your passage. If you can finish the passage in about 20 seconds, then feel free to include a bit more stuff, using simple sentences and getting straight to the point, of course. If you are getting close to 40 seconds, then as long as you have covered all the important stuff, where there should be about 4 to 5 key points for each image, then you have my approval to stop. It's actually really bad to go over time, and you can't see the countdown on the screen during the test, so don't let the machine cut you off mid-sentence. Here is the ultimate appeal of this method. You write down a passage for the first ever line chart you practice. That's all well and good, and when you move on to the second line chart, you will notice that you're basically redoing the whole thing. The sense of discovery repeats itself for all future line charts. Everyone has their own certain habit for delivery, so you should see a pattern in your choice of phrasing. That's your template. You don't have to go and memorize whatever awkward template designed by someone else. You can come up with your own. Once again, as long as it meets the requirements for fluency, pronunciation, and content, I don't give a damn about anything else. What I do care about is you liking my videos, subscribing to my channel, and sharing with others who are also preparing for the test. I will give you an example. Here is a map in the offline practice test. Let's first discuss what you should include in the image. You gotta include the title if there is one. If you don't know why, then you are the child that should have been left behind. It talks about gorilla distribution, so you should mention the 3 different types. I don't really care if you mention their respective colors on the map, so long as you do it in a sufficiently simple way and doesn't mess up your delivery if you choose to include them at all. But what about the relationship and conclusion stuff? This is the bit that many might leave out when following the template to the teeth because there isn't a single sentence in the template to allow for that information. This is the part that I will ask you to just swap out a useless sentence from the template and just say, most of Africa doesn't have gorillas. I'd say this isn't too difficult for most of you, right? So we have to say Africa. We have to say the 3 types of gorillas, and the implied message is that they are only found in very restricted regions. Let's see if a template that is supposedly designed specifically for map questions actually do the job. Yikes, this is painful to watch. Let this be a reminder that even if you choose to mostly follow templates, there exist situations that you need to change it. I cannot stress this enough. Don't follow templates word for word. Let's fit in the parts that we can actually use, which are just the first 2 sentences and possibly the 5th. You see how the template just has in conclusion somewhere random in there but doesn't actually talk about the conclusion. Let's get rid of that. It disgusts me. Kind of a slow start, but we'll see what we can do. How about just add in the conclusion to the end? There we go. The answer seems quite acceptable already. This map gives the information about gorilla distribution in Africa. According to the map, in the center of the map, we can see mountain gorilla in cyan and eastern lowland gorilla in purple. On the west side of the map, we can see western lowland gorilla in yellow. In conclusion, most of Africa doesn't have gorillas. You know what's neat? This passage has 56 words in it. Does it ring a bell? That's right. Read aloud passages have somewhere around 60 words. This is very nice. It basically tells you that you did good. Just remember, you are supposed to read it out loud to max your fluency and pronunciation. This goes to show that if you can understand the image, you really don't have to overcomplicate things with templates or whatnot to answer it nicely. This is not IELTS speaking. You don't need complex sentence structures to show that you're adept at moving your mouth. Using simpler phrases and structures, but making things clear efficiently is what you should go for. Let me give you 2 other ways to answer this question. The first is a very freestyle way. This map shows a continent of Africa and its majority is colored in green. Only a very limited area in the center is color-coded to show the existence of gorillas. There are 3 major types in total, named Eastern Lowland, Western Lowland, and Mountain gorillas. This picture shows that gorilla habitats have been destroyed by human activities, so their existence have shrunk to very narrow regions, implying the significance to preserve their natural living environments. Let's discuss a bit regarding the 3 scoring components. Not only does this answer cover everything we want to talk about, it went overboard and gave a lot of other stuff that kinda goes beyond what the image wants to convey. Didn't mention every color, but that's not really important. Nevertheless, the delivery is clean and the crucial info is being covered. Therefore, there is no reason for the machine to punish this answer. But if you have the ability to give such a flawless answer for every question, then why are you here? Here is another simple answer. This map shows the continent of Africa. It shows the gorilla distribution. There are 3 types of gorillas: mountain gorillas, eastern lowland gorillas, and western lowland gorillas. We only see gorillas in Central Africa, but not anywhere else. And this answer only has 38 words, but it gives you an idea of how simplistic your answer can be. This one covers just enough info. What I ask you to think about now is whether there is any reason for the machine to deduct points from this answer. There shouldn't be any, but I would say it probably can't be any simpler than this. This is an extreme example to demonstrate that you should focus on getting the message across using simpler terms and phrases so you can have a better control with your speech. Maybe not this simple, but you get the idea. These 2 sample answers should provide you with an acceptable range of complexity that you can go for. If your answers are somewhere in between, you're probably fine. Just remember the key points. You should at least cover the most significant info from the picture, which there should be about 4 to 5, and you should deliver them clearly and fluently as if you are reading out a script like how it is for read aloud. Everything else, like how long it takes you, how simple your phrases are, what trivial details you choose to include and leave out, and so on, can be decided by you with some discretion. As long as you satisfy the most basic of requirements, you have the liberty over a variety of options. Templates or not, I cannot recommend enough for you to write down the script, at least for the first couple questions for each image type, and later on you will notice your own habits, which you can most certainly use as your own template. Let's go through some of the details regarding different image types. The first is pie chart. This is probably the simplest type you can get. You really just have to get the title, the components, and their respective proportions, and that's about it. How easy is this question type? There usually doesn't even exist a conclusion, which makes sense as the image type is just showing how much each part takes up. Don't try to force out a conclusion like you've been constipated for a week. If you get the names and numbers, you are all set. Line charts and bar charts are slightly more complicated. For these image types, there's usually more emphasis on the variation with respect to time, which is often used as the x-axis. You should pay attention to the trend of the lines and the respective positioning of the lines to each other. You should consider talking about where lines meet and cross, and how some lines might always lie above or below others. Maps are another common type of image. For those, you should know some geographic vocabulary in advance, like the continents and some common countries.
What is this?
I don't know.
How about this?
I don't know. Nope.
This?
Nope.
This?
Nope.
This?
Nope.
This?
Nope. Russia.
Because they don't always label everything that you might want to talk about. Another thing is that you should incorporate the cardinal directions in your answer, namely north, east, south, and west. It gets a bit trickier when you want to talk about the diagonal directions, but it gets better with practice. Write them down in your script to remind yourself. If this is my 5th time mentioning this concept, it's probably important. It's up to you to decide exactly what you want.
Russia.
Tables are another very basic question type. They can be a bit daunting with a lot of numbers, but the main idea is just comparing different categories, sometimes including change with respect to time. Here come the more annoying ones that might make you weep. The first is flowcharts. If it forms a loop, then it's a cycle, and you should probably mention the word cycle somewhere in your answer. The key concept is just follow the flow and say, the next step is blah blah blah, and rinse and repeat. This one is alright, but some rare ones have like 20 steps and they have very difficult words. In this case, remember that you can kinda choose which ones to say and which ones to ignore. Just be smart about it. The next is just a photo. This one is really difficult to answer if you are a fanatic for templates because the photo can literally be for anything, like a tree. It kind of forces you to improvise and actually describe what you see. Once again, there might not be a clear conclusion for this question type, so if you insist on following the template, I don't judge, but I will judge if you still say, in conclusion, the picture gives a lot of information. I'm gonna be honest with you, that sounds like a student doing a presentation on a topic about which they know literally nothing, and constipated at the same time. The last type is probably the most convoluted, even more so than photos. This is what I like to call illustrations. It might be showing you the internal structure of the earth, it might be showing how to use the keyboard correctly, or it might be showing you a timeline of historical events. This is probably the most open-ended type of question, so it's really difficult to categorize them and talk about them in general. You know what? We will get to this during question walkthrough when they come up. I'm definitely not being irresponsible here. A few more things to talk about. The first is grammar. It should be clear to you now that speaking questions don't have a grammar component, and it didn't concern you at all when doing read aloud and repeat sentence, because what you read or hear will all be grammatically correct. This will become a problem when freestyling, so my advice is make things simpler so you're less likely to make a mistake. Don't worry too much if you do, because it isn't scored at all. The only worry is that if your speech is too broken, then your fluency might be affected, so there's that. Oh, and one more thing. Some pictures will not just belong to one type we mentioned before. It might be a mix of multiple types. This shouldn't be too big of a problem because most of the times you can simply regard them as separate images and just describe each individually. You might miss out on the connection, but I permit you to have some imperfections.
Russian.
That'll be all for today. The next question walkthrough will be on describe image, and we will discuss specific questions to see how we can apply the aforementioned methods to help you score high with ease. Thanks for sticking to the end. Please like, subscribe, and share with others if this is helpful. Let's not have a meltdown during press conferences because you accidentally made a racist comment on live television, and I'll see you all next time.